week after that episode, is there anything Strange New Worlds could do to convince us to keep watching? Or is it like giving you a tour of the World Trade Center Plaza on September the 12th, 2001? Well, keep watching, because you're about to find out. Space. A continuous extension interval between planets, stars and other objects. These are the critiques of the critic McElvoy. His continuing mission to review strange new shows, to seek out new work and new bastardizations, to boldly note what no critic has noted before. Hey Critics Loggers, it's Dr. McElvoy here, it's not my real name. It's hard to believe it's only been a week since 4.5 Vulcans. Thanks to all of you who wrote to me or messaged me to ask if I was okay. I think maybe that's the only thing that got me through the last 7 days. Your support. And a lot of booze. I've slept 4 hours in 7 days, and well, there was a half nap today, but unfortunately, I was roused before I could fall into a coma. The temptation after last week was not to watch anymore, not to put yourself through it again. You know, if I had a loving partner, if there was a Mrs. McElvoy, well, or even a Mr. McElvoy, I'm sure they'd be shaking me and saying, "Don't do it, don't go back. Don't go back." But I've got a duty to you, dear viewer. A duty to see this season out. Knowing that when it ends next week, there'll be at least a year's grace before we have to suffer the 4th season together. And that should just be enough to recover from what was, frankly, the worst televisual experience in my life. And, you know, I grew up in the era of, BBC sitcoms like Bonjour la Classe. And Nelson's Column with John Gordon Sinclair. And Short-Lived Mulberry with the bloke from Brushstrokes. But there was nothing to compare with what happened last week. So what could Strange New Worlds do to bring us back from the brink, to effectively shock us back to life? Well, for a start, they could have a story that took the storytelling seriously, that was a real piece of drama. In that, Terranium does succeed on a superficial level. But the real tease of this episode was the prospect that Erica Ortegas, the much loathed helmsman of Pike's USS Enterprise, would finally die. Teasing it is is a beautiful thing. It's just the boost the audience need. Oh, I'm on my last legs. I couldn't possibly indulge in another episode of Strange New Worlds. Not after 4.5 Vulcans. Never again. Wait. We're gonna kill Ortegas. I'm in. I'm back in. Does she die horribly? Is she brutally ripped apart on a barren alien world? Well, no. Unfortunately, no. But for a long time, it looks like it could happen. In an extended teaser, we're reminded why we hate her. She talks about her middle name being Safe, when I always thought it was fuck off, because that's what I tend to say before Ortegas. You see, the ability to joke is gone. That's what 4.5 Vulcans did to me. She calls Spock fat. And then when she's marooned on a alien planet because for no reason she has to pilot a shuttle blind to release a buoy, she's pulled through the wormhole, crashes on a planet, and we're treated to a sort of reprise of Enemy Mine, or indeed The Enemy from TNG, the episode that convinced Brannon Braga that the show was worth writing for after the shit he'd seen in the first season.
Name and rank.
Lieutenant Commander Geordie LaForge. I don't think I got yours.
A Romulan ship will arrive shortly. You will accompany me on board.
I don't think so. See, we heard your message too, and well, the fleet's in, Commodore. Sky's full of Federation ships.
You're lying.
I never lie when I've got sand in my shoes, Commodore.
Would this be the episode that convinced us to carry on for 17 more episodes? Well, not quite, for reasons that we'll get to. But for a while, it almost feels like a real Star Trek episode. It's serious, despite the presence of Ortegas. It does have some horrible lines, because almost all the dialogue stuffed into her mouth is terrible. So when she makes a device to pull moisture out of the air for water, she says, oh, I've made water. And you think, I'd have phrased that a little differently. But, you know, this is her. She sends out a distress signal and feels the need to make a silly joke. Come find me and bring snacks. If I heard that Mayday, I wouldn't go looking. But mystifyingly, the people on the Enterprise care about Ortegas. They want to find her. They want to bring her home, even though she's an irritant and she's insubordinate. But the other thing about Erica, you may recall, is that she hates the Gorn. Remember? She's traumatised by her experiences at the beginning of this season. Got PTSD. That's what made her a little bit shaky. The Gorn are the enemy. The Gorn are subhuman monsters. In fact, they're not human at all, are they? They're reptiles. So they can't be related to in any way. Despite all the evidence that they're highly intelligent, sophisticated beings. The fact that they have warp technology. They're a spacefaring civilization. They have spacesuits and weapons and have colonised other planets. We're still disgusted by them in the Strange New Worlds universe. And disgusted at home because the Federation know anything about them at all, which completely contradicts everything we know from the TOS episode Arena. So Erica and a Gorn together on a barren planet trying to survive. The shock for Erica is that the Gorn that she's trapped with, a lady Gorn it turns out, is not a mindless monster, but actually an intelligent being that protects her from the space worms that live underground, shields her, feeds her, gives her guidance in applying dressing to a wound, and has survived on the planet for a long time, customizing power sources, personal shielding, and all the rest of it. Built a camp. Erica can hardly believe it. How can a mindless animal do all of these things? It's like it must be intelligent. She plays chess with the Gorn. The Gorn beats her 3 times. And then it starts to click. Maybe, just maybe, the Gorn aren't imbeciles. Now, of course, we already know they're not imbeciles, based on the preponderance of evidence. And we'd know that anyway, wouldn't we? Just because of everything I've just mentioned. But it needs to be said on Strange New Worlds because of the Gorn's portrayal as a mindless beast, a xenomorph with a spaceship. A portrayal that, as you know, completely contradicts what we later learn about them in Arena, when the Metrons intervene and say, "Enough of this, it's time you learned about one another." Now, what's the big twist in Terranium? Oh yeah, there's a twist. Throughout Ortegas's experience, she sees a little light in the sky. Get the feeling you've been watched, she intones, and it proves she has been watched. By whom? Of course. Who else? By the Metrons. Because it turns out that this isn't just a rip-off of the TNG episode The Enemy and the movie Enemy Mine. No. It's also a sort of prequel cum rip-off of Arena. Not a rewrite, not an overwrite, but one that has it both ways. It's setting up Arena for us. The Metrons appear and they say, "Well, we're going to have to erase your memory of us, but you will retain your memory of the Gorn. It may be necessary because you're thick as pig excrement to return in the future and reset your perception of the Gorn." Which of course they do in Arena. But that leaves us with the question of why such a reset would now be necessary. Because Erica has learned that the Gorn are, to all intents and purposes, human. As Kirk once said, I think it was in The Undiscovered Country, we're all human. Doesn't matter what we look like. All intelligent beings have things in common, don't they? They've all got language, they've all got technology, they've all got curiosity. They love and they lose, and they die. And in that respect, we're all the same. There are cultural differences, of course, some pretty big cultural differences between the Gorn and human beings, and some differences born of biology, because naturally humans and Gorn are very different biologically speaking, and biology informs thinking and shapes culture, doesn't it? As we know only too fucking well. So Erica knows that the Gorn are just people, really. She gets to like her Gorn. She plays with her Gorn. They have a chat on a sort of semi-improvised universal translator. And, they shoot the shit. And they save each other's lives. Until that idiot Lan, that gung-ho imbecile, shows up and brutally guns down Erica's Gorn friend at the end, as we, of course, knew she had to. But the Metrons appear mid-beam out, so none of the the away team see them. Now, you'll need to explain it to me like I'm a 4-year-old. Why is it necessary for Kirk later to fight a Gorn and learn that they're just, two of a kind after the events of this episode? Erica has learned more about the Gorn than most Federation officers during her experience on the alien moon. All she needs to do is put her findings into a report, which she'd be obliged to do as a Federation officer. She'd disseminate it amongst the crew, a crew which includes Uhura and Spock, who will be there later when the Metrons appear in Arena. And she'll tell everybody she knows. In fact, now she's a sort of new authority on the Gorn. She should become famous. She should do a speaking tour. One imagines they'll want to see her everywhere. You're reminded that today at Starbase 64, it's Erica Ortegas, and she'll be recounting her experience with the Gorn on an alien moon. Don't miss it. That's The Gorn and I at 3 p.m. And there she'll be, won't she, telling her story, sure, embellishing it a little bit every time, adding some zingers, some zany one-liners to get the audience on side, make them laugh. But it will be basically the same story. I crashed, I survived for a little while, and then I nearly died until I met my Lady Gorn friend. We'll call her Penelope. Penelope and I struggled for a while, and we were about to escape. I had to, ignite the atmosphere on the moon and burn the atmosphere off it nearly to get the attention of the Enterprise. But you know what? Everything would have been fine if Lan hadn't brutally murdered my friend. But that's a Nunny and Sungs for you, isn't it? So, everyone will know this story. Everyone in the Federation will know. What are the Metrons going to do? Wipe it from all human memories? And why would they do that when the purpose was to kind of see how a human and a Gorn would interact together? And presumably allow them to learn from one another. You don't remove the learning, do you? You don't, bring the kids to class and then at the end of the day do a mind wipe. You expect them to take home their learning and apply it. So I repeat my question, please. As it was clear at the end of the episode that Ortegas retained full memory of her time with the Gorn, and she told Uhura all about it, why would it be necessary for Kirk to be educated by the Metrons again years later? Why doesn't the episode inform the Federation's entire view and policy toward the Gorn? Alright, it's a bit embarrassing because they killed the Gorn in question, but they could leave that part out. Who's going to know? Right? And just say, well, unfortunately, Penelope died of her injuries on the planet. She was too far gone to be saved. And indeed, we learned in this episode that in Gorn culture, injured Gorn are not expected to survive. They're damaged goods. Bin them off. Throw them on the pyre. If you're compromised in some way. So one assumes that Gorn medicine is not particularly advanced. not much need to preserve life in that culture. But, you know, it's just the way they are, isn't it? You've got to be tolerant and that. So, why wouldn't it change everything? It feels to me, I mean, this will be billed in officially as a prequel to Arena. And it's set up. But it felt to me more like an overwrite on the malady that afflicts Strange New Worlds. Its tendency to overwrite the original series, to take its material, asset strip it, repackage it, and present it like a new thing, but something that either contradicts the original series or encroaches on its continuity to such a degree that you can almost feel the tension between the two episodes. It's like, it's a bit too close for comfort, you know. Gives me the chills. It's like someone walking over my grave. How do you reconcile these two episodes? That's the question. And it's a shame. Because as we're contemplating these things, as well as the slightly derivative nature of the plot and the setup, it sort of undoes the fact that in all other respects, this is a pretty decent episode of Strange New Worlds. I was going to say of Star Trek, but then the two should not be confused by me or any other commentator. The production was great. Visual effects were really good. Ortegas was alright, I suppose. Still an irritant, but she had plenty to do here, and I don't know, I can't say I grew to like her, but I sort of thought she'd done enough to survive. But it's all for naught. It's all for naught if all it amounts to is a sort of soft reboot of Arena. Don't you think? I mean, after 4.5 Vulcans, what we really needed was perhaps the greatest episode of Star Trek ever made. Only that, I feel, would have compensated for what happened last week. Now, this is not that. It's enough to sort of make you think, if every episode of Strange New Worlds was like this, it would be tolerable. And, you know, you might come away thinking, yeah, I could cope with this. This is alright. This is perfectly watchable. Not original, but watchable. But it's that tendency to overwrite the Star Trek we know and love that makes this obnoxious. And here it is again, presented with a smile on its face. The Akiva Goldsman Project. Just what you know, but slightly different. We can't let this fucker get away with it. Not after last week. After last week, I want to see the TV equivalent of the Nuremberg trials, and I want everyone involved in this show in the dock, including, I'm afraid, Ortegas. And with that, and a very heavy heart, a heart that still hurts, let's do anomalous readings. Ortegas mentioned something called Division 12 that usually goes off and, as she called it, looks at ghost stories at sea. Who the hell are Division 12? Do you know? Are they like Section 31? And if they are, why aren't they called Section 12? So we've got divisions and sections? Didn't like that. Is Spock fat? Well, he says not, and I believe him. And I think he was fundamentally wrong of Ortegas to try and fat shame Mr. Spock. For that alone, he should have suggested to Pike they didn't look for her. I, for one, would not have bothered. I'd have been on my way to the other planet to give the life-saving vaccine faster than you could say warp 3. It seemed to me this episode could have been the ultimate nightmare, just marooned with Ortegas' personality. They'd had no agenda at all to foreground Arena, or to rip it off, or to overwrite it, or to rip off the TNG episode The Enemy. It could have been a very interesting episode about loneliness. And what does somebody do when they are marooned with one of the most obnoxious personalities in the universe? Themselves. I'd have liked to have seen that show. Spock teased us by saying that the wormhole could have led to anywhere in the galaxy. Indeed, even an alternate universe. And that got me thinking, wouldn't it be cool if it led to the Star Trek universe? It's very lucky for us that Ortegas has no internal monologue. She's used to saying just whatever comes into her head, no matter how stupid. And so it was here. And that was good, because if she hadn't spoken, it would have been a very, very boring hour. Without her telling us what she was doing, or wondering about, or what was going on. Whoever wrote this thing couldn't think of an organic way to illustrate it just by showing and not telling. So we got a lot of telling. And that was great, because it meant I didn't have to really think hard or pay attention. Captain Decker of the Constellations mentioned, presumably Matt Decker of Doomsday Machine fame. Another tease that this actually is something to do with the original series. How they like to mock us. Una, uniquely amongst the Enterprise crew, was very keen to get the fuck out of there and leave Ortegas behind. She's been gone now 12 minutes. Well, that's enough for me. I think she's dead. I think we can all agree she's dead. Shall we just move on to our next mission? Well, hang on, Una, hang on. Shouldn't we look for her first? She's gone. But Uhura just kept going on and on about it. Oh, I miss her. I think we should look for her. We should launch 12 probes, and I'm going to fake some data logs so that we have to look for her. Oh, I miss Ensign Ortegas. Somebody I've had no real on-screen relationship with in 29 episodes. Please, Captain, please, can we go and look for her? Can we? I'm with Una. Ortegas always has a stupid line in every episode. This was no exception, of course. In fact, it was guaranteed, because she had 90% of the episode's dialogue. Other than come find me and bring snacks, and other than I've made water, I particularly hated I just killed us. Thank God Gene Roddenberry had the foresight to make a series that didn't feature Ortegas, and consequently we know at the very least we've only got her for 17 more episodes, and then hopefully we'll never see her again. No offence to the actress who plays Ortegas, but I can't wait for you to be gone. And finally, we found out that in the past Ortegas had told Uhura that her middle name was Danger. Danger's my middle name, get it? It's that joke from Austin Powers. Austin Danger Powers. A joke that Erica must have heard some stage and repeated. But it's not funny, is it? So that's it for this week. Next week, it's the finale for Season 3. One of the most punishing, grueling seasons of New Trek we have encountered. How do you end it? How do you end a season like this one? Can the third season be redeemed? No, it can't be, but alright. Can any anticipation be created for Season 4? It's an almost impossible task. Next week we will do a very brief overview of the third season, and we will find out if indeed it's possible we can have anything to look forward to on this show. Until then, out!
Close the channel, Mr. Worf.
Gladly, sir.